welcome back to all of us again. Thank you, Samir and Rajat, for joining us on this session. It's been an interesting morning, and as Kashita rightly pointed out, we are poised just before lunch. And this is a very interesting theme. I think people will bid their time before heading out to lunch, given that this is the right time to discuss this. And the reason for me to ask you to switch your places is there is a slide right behind, and there is an order of seating. And I do this math before I walk on stage every time, you know. Anyways, on that note, as the latest budget kind of laid out proposed the idea of a GCC national framework, a lot of public the GCC community in particular has its own take, in terms of what expectations they have, what are the things that should rightfully be included, how to harmonize the whole idea of policies, frameworks, taxation. There's just so much happening because, India is kind of a diverse country. There are different state governments. There is a central government. There's a very robust democracy that's out there. So how do we harmonize the laws? How do we harmonize infrastructure? How do we harmonize the various aspects that go on to making this a place for business as far as GCCs are concerned? So on that note, very quickly, let me kind of bring in our panelists into the discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let me start off with Samir. Samir, UBS is highly regulated, in terms of the kind of space that you come from. So and it's also very tech intensive as well. So what expectations have you kind of, laid out for yourself, or what expectations would you kind of want to lay out when it comes to the GCC national framework? So some top of the mind points that you have, and what would you want to see, saying that, okay, this doesn't exist right now, but should be there, or if it's there, very good, and what more can be done?
So first of all, thank you for having us, really, and it's interesting to meet great colleagues of ours in the room. It's an interesting question, Shantheri, and I think the government is kind of making some great strides on the national framework. At least they're thinking about it on alignment to the state frameworks. Because if you look at the overall data governance policies, which we have, the DPTP that got launched in 18 months ago, in 2023, alignment to the GDPR guidelines really helps global organizations and BFSI GCCs under that domain, like ours, where we handle a lot of client-sensitive data, employee data, which is highly confidential. And if you look at the data protection framework, it talks about client consent processing, our data fiduciary responsibilities, how the cross-border data is being handled, and what are the rules and policies around it. So that actually helps us to kind of bring in a lot of heavy duty or heavy demand compliance and risk kind of functions operating out of India. And I think we can capitalize on this because the GDPR was born in 2018 and DPTP in 2023. So as these two kind of frameworks kind of evolve over a period of time, I think alignment of the DP to the GDPR makes a lot of sense. And I think that's where the thinking needs to go in. The second one is obviously we are talking about the single window clearance, which is a one-stop shop for all the new GCCs whose bread and butter is compliance and risk only, and not the other functions like any other BFSI GCCs existing in India. So the single window clearance, which the government is thinking around for digital approvals, etc., will be a big booster for ease of doing business for us. And I'll then pass on to Rajat after one last point. The regulatory sandboxes, which we kind of now, if you look at RBI or SEBI, they have introduced regulatory sandboxes. It really helps organizations like ours to look at how do we infuse artificial intelligence into some of the solutions which we want to drive. If you want to build risk models based on machine learning, etc., you have those safe playgrounds to play around with, which means that you are not hitting upon a compliance issue beforehand, but you are validating your solution before it gets into production. And that's really beneficial for us. I think there's some great strides made by the government.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. And also this single window clearance, I mean, banking really like kind of introduced this term, right? And I think the government has played up to that point very well. If it really comes out, comes through and goes forward in the sense, in the real sense of the word, in letter and spirit, I think this will open up the GCC, market for India. Not just now, but will sustain over a period of time without like really bursting the bubble, right? So great point, Sameer. Rajat, as a part of, being part of, a global telecom, software provider space, what are some of those top of the recall points that you have to add on to what Sameer just stated? Such that, this space can actually like really take control of the end-to-end product cycles and innovations at scale. All yours.
So first of all, thanks for inviting, and nice to see so many people here. First, I agree with Sameer in terms of what he was talking about, GDPR and single window clearance. So I'll not repeat these points because he already spoke about it. But first, it was encouraging to see our finance minister talking about a national framework in the budget speech this year. It is important to have that kind of a national framework. And what we need to understand is, I know different states have different political parties and different governments, and they keep competing with each other in terms of the GCC. But what we require is one national framework and policy. Most of the GCCs, lots of GCCs, I should not say most, but number of GCCs are in multi-cities, multi-places. So you need one single policy framework that needs to be there for across that people can really work. Now, if states want to compete, they can compete on ease of doing business, bureaucratic procedures, and infrastructure. I mean, in the morning panel, we spoke about the infrastructure of Pune and how it lacks and those kind of stuff. I think this is where the state needs to compete, but we need to have a national framework in terms of how the GCC needs to operate. And few things that actually can come into this whole framework. We have lots of these policies. For example, advanced pricing, APA. Now, it takes quite some time before we actually decide on what that it is. For some of these policies to be effective, they need to be decided at the start of the period, not towards the mid and the end of the period. Because if the uncertainty continues, it doesn't give confidence to the global stakeholders. That's one. Plus, if you look at incentives today, at least particularly for GCC, we keep talking about transfer pricing. Now, transfer pricing rules per se actually facilitate or favor low-end work in India. If we really want to be innovative and do high-end work in India, the whole pyramid needs to change. The taxation is today highest if you are doing R&D and product work rather than if you are doing a BPO and a KPO work. Nothing against BPO or KPO, but thing is, government needs to look at how do you incentivize work that is high-end and more towards product development and R&D, because that becomes a hindrance when you look at these things. One more point I wanted to talk about, when we created all these schemes of STPI, SEZ and those kind of stuff, if my understanding is correct, it was more focused towards manufacturing. You bring machinery into India, you produce, instead of selling into the domestic market, use the machinery to export, earn foreign exchange and all those kind of stuff. Now, if you look at GCCs, they are already earning a foreign exchange. Whether they are in STPI, SEZ or in the domestic tariff area, they will earn, by nature of this definition of it, they will earn the foreign exchange. So why can't the incentives be there irrespective of where they are positioned, whether they are inside a SEZ or STPI or whether they are in the domestic area, because ultimately they are earning the foreign exchange. So I think that's pretty important from my perspective. And last point I like to add is we need to promote, infrastructural clusters where actually startups, GCCs and academics can actually coexist and co-create. We need such clusters to be able to, move towards what we need to achieve.
Absolutely, absolutely, and well stated. Irrespective of where the GCC is located, incentives should be, I mean, that's a big thing, because this cannot be, and how many special zones, economic zones can we create? How many clusters can we create? There's only so much of a green field that can exist, right, across the country. So I think that constraint is very valid to remove or consider, right? So on that note, Rajat, I'll just stay with you before I move back to Sameer. So how have you really reimagined, at Amdocs, how have you really looked at reimagining your whole idea of innovation, looking at innovation at scale, looking at costs, looking at really becoming that strategic innovator, disruptor at scale. So if you could give us some instances.
So we started in India in 2004, almost 20 years back, or over 20 years back. And we also started like most of the GCs will do, in terms of the more operational work, most on the cost arbitrage and all those kind of stuff. So we also started like that only. Over a period of time, very consciously and strategically, we have actually, and in the earlier mode, it is basically a parent organization versus a GCC kind of a mode, where you deliver it to the parent organization, the work and all those kind of stuff. So what we have done strategically over a period of time, and I'll give you two things that we did. First, we looked at the organization structure itself. We didn't want it to remain in this parent GCC, parent-child or parent-GCC relationship and execute on that. What we did was we slowly integrated into the entire organization seamlessly, so that this whole relationship of parent and GCC goes away, and we are not delivering to the parent organization, but actually contributing to the business goals of the organization. We did it in few things. First, we consciously took a call that rather than growing GCC by one big unit, we will get all the units representation into India. The idea was all senior leaders should have experience in India and have stakes in India. So this is what we did in terms of doing, so that we are seamlessly integrated. Today we don't have this parent and GCC kind of a thing. The second thing we did was we started bringing niche roles and domain knowledge into India, because we wanted to make sure that we have, if you really want to go on the value chain, you need to value add to the organization and actually contribute, as I said, to the business goal or customer KPIs.
So niche roles meaning?
Niche roles, program management, solution architect, some of these middle-level roles that you can actually get here and actually, start climbing that value chain, do that. Product owners, data analysts, and those kind of stuff. That helped actually for us to take end-to-end ownership of the work that we are doing. And today, actually, there's hardly any project. We are pretty sizable number of organization today in India, and there is hardly any project that goes across the world where India does not have a contribution. This also included, grooming local leadership, and as I said, we consciously, invested in the middle-level management so that we are able to get global roles over a period of time. And we also negotiated or actually convinced the management to have equal or right representation of leadership in India based on the headcount, so that we can reduce the remote management and we can get end-to-end accountability of things here.
So interesting that you spoke about niche roles. You spoke about the integration between parent and the GCC seamlessly, so there's nothing called as a parent and
Exactly.
So that's a very interesting thing you just said. This integration, seamless integration. So how did it come about? If I may just stay with you for half a minute.
So what we did was we started grooming, first we started looking at what are the location agnostic roles, which can actually be, work from India, and in terms of, first of all, what is important for the company in terms of the strategic goals of the company, growth areas. So what are those niche skills and, domain knowledge that we'll require in India for our company to grow? And we consciously started investing in our middle-level management. Getting these particular roles and grooming them, with that. And what we did was we basically made sure that we are giving them cross-unit exposure. We are giving them cross-site exposure. Today, India, incidentally, is a talent exporter to Amdocs worldwide. So that is what we did. We also said we will harness and actually groom them as people leaders and leaders in the organization. We will actually bring some customer-facing role. We host lots of customers in India. So that is also, what we did. We made sure that there is one-to-one mentoring by global Amdocs leaders that happen in India. So that was on developing the middle-level management side of it. What we also did was we convinced management to have a good representation of leadership role proportionate to our, employee base, so that we eliminate remote management to the extent possible from India. We also started getting, as I said, creating senior level positions, and apart from niche roles, and specific roles which actually, one obviously location agnostic, but also hold end-to-end accountability for certain part of the processes or projects. That also did. And this is what helped us to actually, over a period of time, okay, this has been a long journey. This is not, bringing change in some of these big organizations is a marathon. It is not a sprint. So we have done it over a period of time. We had our, setbacks and failures and how we climbed this whole ladder. It has been a very consistent and focused effort. As I said, we wanted every unit to be represented here. We could have done with, one large unit, but we didn't wanted that. We wanted every unit, every senior leader, so that we are able to get that whole management buy-in. So this is how we went around, doing it and building it. And today, I have a global role. I head the global services worldwide for Amdocs for 80 countries. I head India, I head Cyprus. I'm responsible for Amdocs global site strategy worldwide. I have my colleague who heads the entire global services and managed services sitting out of India, almost half the company headcount. I have 25 VPs in India who are all having global roles sitting out of India. So we are no longer restricted to India and those kind of stuff. We are actually integrated vertically into the company. Nobody now talks about a GCC versus parent organization, at least in Amdocs.
So you've stated your case, respect, full respect. If I could salute, I would. Because I think a few years ago, interestingly, Rajat, now that you bring this up, when I was actually trying to wrap my head around this whole idea of, this whole seamless integration of the GCC and parent, the India head of a global banking organization met me and we were trying to understand his role, or I was trying to understand. And when he actually articulated a lot of what you just said, I was confused because I just didn't get this whole transnational, cross-national, cross-functional, this entire blurring of lines of roles, So I went back and did a lot of reading on what he exactly meant. And it eventually sat well in my head as, I started understanding the threads. It's like untangling the knots in your own head, right? So what you said just now kind of takes me back to that conversation I had a few years ago. So thanks for bringing it back. Samir, I'll move to you at this stage. How much of what Rajat just said kind of fits in well with your strategy and agenda at this point of time, A? And B, how do you really believe India, the GCCs in India, can really move out of being execution engines to really being those power centers and power hubs? 2 or 3 things that come out from your, stable as best practices and success stories. All yours.
No, and thank you, Rajat, for sharing the journey. It's really important. I think every GCC is going through its maturity curve over a period of time. So we are 10 years in making in India, not 20. But, I would say that with the acquisition of Credit Suisse not too long ago, we kind of finished the integration on 1st of April. So it's one bank now, and we are like 30,000 odd people right now in India. And if you look at the capabilities that we have acquired or kind of joined up, I mean, we have deep capabilities which already resonate to what Rajat has mentioned, right? We are looking at more product development jobs. We are looking at niche skills like cybersecurity, emerging tech, cloud engineering was always there. So those are the kind of things which we are evolving on the journey. And right now, our future state, clearly with the integrated organization, is going to be on the business transformation, on driving innovation, and also to look at how do we become a self-sustained organization with revenue streams of work, right? And you talked about, how do we kind of want to move the needle? Obviously, these revenue streams of work can come through maybe, creating a lot of IP, patent-driven organizations, right? I mean, a lot of GCCs are actually fueling up their patents. Can we actually, as a consortium, come together and make it a monetizable asset for the international markets? I mean, that's something which, I think GCCs can think about, and that's where we are thinking about.
Absolutely. One of the things that came up during a closed room discussion is the fact that more and more product innovation and product patenting IPs should come from India and not merely as facilitators for IPs that then finally get credited elsewhere,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what Rajat also mentioned was the product link incentive schemes earlier was for manufacturing companies. And I think there's the national law, our expectation is that the national law, I'm pretty sure that they're thinking about it in terms of how do we actually incentivize GCCs who create a lot of IP work, who create a lot of patent, who create those high value additions and the exports which we do from a software or a non-software perspective. And those incentives should be very much so huge in the next 5 years to come that we should have no option but to do it.
Absolutely. So quick question to you, Rajat, here. So if there were to be like a comprehensive national framework, okay, so what do you think it can facilitate in terms of outcome-based collaboration across industries? Because if you look at harmonizing one industry, that's one play out. But if you have to really look at value-based, outcome-based collaborations across industries, how can the national framework really bring about those cognitive changes? Some thoughts here.
No, I did say that. First, I think we need one central framework across India and across...
Which you did state, and you're quite
industry.
passionate.
Because please understand, when a GCC chooses India, they choose a country. They don't start with looking at states. They don't look at, what states offer what. We are looking at, what India has to offer. And that is, for my perspective, a standard framework which actually gives the incentives for doing it is pretty important. The second is...
I would like to interrupt you here and play devil's advocate. It initially starts with the country. But eventually, if something is not conducive, then it becomes a matter of state, right?
Yeah, but that will be more in terms of ease of doing business, infrastructure in the state that the state can provide, not necessarily on the policy. I don't need to deal with a separate labor law in Haryana, Gurgaon versus something in Maharashtra versus something in Telangana. At least from a law perspective, because that also confuses the parent organization quite a bit. If they need to really deal with multiple regulations, that's a very, very different thing. So I think the competition needs to be more from a state perspective, more infrastructure, bureaucracy, and all the ease of doing business and things like that. That would be my take on that.
No,
Sure.
and if I may,
Yeah.
right, I was reading an article, and there are 29 labor laws in India. I think obviously the national framework is looking at how do we converge into the 4, right, which would probably make much more easier for GCCs to thrive into different states and maybe in the tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. So that's a very important aspect.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I still think we're some time away from actually looking at this whole thing of, looking at it actually from the POV of the investors or the companies that are going to come in. And the union government better take cognizance of this because there's feedback that's coming from the community, So I would say...
We can't live in an isolation saying we are the only country that people will come to.
Yeah.
We are competing across the world. So we need to be conscious of that particular fact.
Sure, but I would also say, see, there's a political climate that is also involved. There are different states, different parties ruling different states. So there, across the table, there has to be the Arthur and his knights sitting across the table and really, sort of thrashing it out. So yes, so on that note, what would be, both of you, what would be that sort of advice that you would give for GCC leaders of tomorrow? Rajat, your point, and Samir, I'll come to you.
From my perspective, first have a long-term strategy. Make sure you plan and execute on that. And as I said, change management in some of the big organizations is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you have to have a long-term strategy and you need to actually focus on that and slowly execute on that. Second, I'll say, and this is what at least we have done, focus on quality, not quantity. For the quality of work, yes, initially, you will get low-end operational work and those kind of stuff. But today, we actually pick work comes to India. And the focus is on quality, not quantity. We actually we have started even refusing some of the work. We don't want that. We can do, follow the sun model. And today, we are actually supporting multiple sites of Amdocs to grow. And we actually are exporting talent to those sites to develop it. So we actually are very conscious in terms of what work we pick up in India. So that's one important, because if you focus on quality, quantity will follow. We are a reasonable cost kind of a thing. That is a given kind of a thing. I already spoke about that. Focus on building niche skill and domain knowledge, which is important to the company. Typically what happens is GCCs are mired on internal KPIs, project timelines and efficiencies and those kind of stuff. We need to start looking at the company business outline, top line, bottom line, EPS, or even customer KPIs, in terms of churn rates and, predict net promoter score and those kind of stuff. So we need to start contributing at the company level rather than to the parent organization. That's what, according to me, and also you will not have all the answers. So you need to start collaborating with multiple stakeholders and make sure that you learn faster than most other people. That's what I'll say.
Perfect, perfect. So Samir, if you could add on to this, and how do you see the GCC national framework also being a big contributor to the leadership of tomorrow?
So I'll start with the first part of the question. I mean, clearly, like what Rajat mentioned, you have to have a purpose-led organization to make sure that each and every employee of yours understands what's the purpose, what the business you are in, how you're helping the client, what's your day-to-day job looking like. We talked about a lot of employee value proposition in the past, but there's also an employer value proposition that you continuously need to build on year to stay ahead of the curve. I mean, we are in the business of serving our ultra high net worth individuals. We deal with real money. We are a very heavily regulated organization. And every single aspect which we do out of the GCCs in Pune, Mumbai, Hyderabad, etc., I mean, it has to contribute to the client outcomes. If you're not, then we're only hitting the bottom line. It's no longer a cost arbitrage. We are constantly need to evolve to find how do we hit the top line and make revenue for the firm overall.
Absolutely, because as Rajat said, India is not the only place that a company can
Exactly.
actually go to. We shouldn't be under that delusion, always that यहाँ नहीं आएंगे तो कहाँ जाएंगे, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So how do you think the GCC national framework can actually contribute to the leadership of tomorrow?
Well, on the leadership side, I think if you look at the national mission, etc., some of those laws, there's obviously a budget which is ring-fenced right now for research and development in different states. There's T-Hub in Telangana, there is Karnataka is offering some of the fintech startups and ecosystem, etc. Maharashtra has got a few things. And I think overall, if you look at, while our staff need to get trained on AI or emerging tech or the new set of technologies coming through, leaders have to do it first, right? And then I think that the overall ecosystem which India is kind of evolving towards and will continue in the next 2-3 years of time will help our leader community to actually get up in there. More global roles is already being talked about, so I won't repeat that. But the frameworks need to be very supportive of new GCCs coming through. We are 1,700 today. We want to go to 2,500 in the next 5 years, right? Half a decade is not a long time. But I'm pretty sure that with the national framework coming on top of the house, where there's guiding principles and some of the policies which the states can adopt and cross collaboration on the states rather than anti-competing, they will fuel it to another 500 GCCs coming to India.
Absolutely. I'm pleased as punch with this duo here. They've been so careful to bring out newer points with everything that we have discussed today. Great points, but I know we are close to lunch, and मुझे भी बहुत जोर से भूख लगी है, but we can allow a question here, please. Any questions for our panelists here? Yeah, we see a raised hand here. We'll allow this one question, please. If you could quickly introduce yourself and keep your question extremely crisp and short.
Thank you. Myself, Sunil Gun from Siemens Energy, 18 years industry experience. And I felt myself in line with Mr. Rajat. I felt for some time he is representing my organization because most of the things what he is doing is synergetic way at Siemens Energy India. From as an employee perspective, for you and the government, when GCC center gets integrated with the global organization, as an employee, we feel we are leveraged with the multiple skill set. We get motivated. As an employee, we get basic universal skill set ready for any role in the organization at any moment. Organization also follows. After 2 to 3 years, they are changing every people's role. They are not binding to the one role through the entire career in one department. This helps GCC centers to be more adaptable for global challenges and the quality and reduce the employee,
So
the
your
shift and time
question
period.
in specific?
Right. So going forward as a GCC centers, what they think about the employee retention and attract more competitive talent for their success.
Sure. So if each of you could give your opinion around this.
So actually, at least what we are doing is we are using AI. Obviously, people will need to, I think most of the organizations have platforms today to do learning and, provide platforms for learning. I think what we are doing differently is we have something called an eightfold AI, where people can actually define their own career paths. It is integrated with a learning system, so what employees can do is actually chart out their own path and actually understand what do they need to develop in terms of the skills as they go forward. That effect, what actually enables people to be retained. We believe in one simple philosophy, have better professionals and better human being, organization will prosper.
Absolutely. Samir?
So if I may actually redefine your question, I think what you're asking is how can me as an employee be attracted to work for an organization and what's in it for me? right? I think it's the purpose. We talked about employer and employee value proposition. How's my career going to launch from now to the day 2 to the day 3? What are the frameworks in the organization that can help me to go around internal mobility? There is obviously some of the national laws which talk about with the UK and Australia in terms of rotation of these product niche roles, which we talked about earlier. And if you look at the development journeys which Rajat talked about, it's there in all the GCCs today. It's partnered with governments, it's partnered with non-governments, some of the startups, some of the incubators, the sandboxes. I mean, in the Bangalore Summit in October, I talked about the composite incubator, which kind of is a mechanism or a vehicle for these startups to come together and co-develop with you. And that attracts an employee today. And the end prize at the end of the road is the patent, which the employee will actually drive for and make a name for themselves.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I think both of you gave in the larger philosophical abstract and the factual abstract of it. So great points. And one of the things that you both brought up about transfer pricing will be taken up in detail in the post-afternoon tracks. So as a erstwhile student of chartered accountancy, it's personally my passion as well. So I think there are great points that will come out more in depth then. So I know I would really love to kind of grill the two of you a lot more, but in the interest of time, I think we should really call a close to this session. But great points. Thank you so much. And as I kind of tumble and jumble more into the nitty-gritty of it, thank you so much. Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Rajat. It was a great session. Thanks, Satan.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.